Well, Peter Khalil is the federal Labor member for the seat of Wills. He's also the government's special envoy for social cohesion. And Peter joins me now. Good morning, Peter.
Morning, Catherine. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, not at all. Do you think what we're seeing right now reflects the broadly felt sentiment in our society, or do you think this is the work of a few, a loud minority?
I hope it's the latter. I hope it's the work of a loud minority who consider violence or hate speech or vilification to be some form of legitimate political ideological expression. It's not. It is not only illegal, it is also unacceptable. I think the vast majority of Australians would reject outright the idea that you could attack, or it's legitimate to attack someone based on their faith if you don't agree with them. I mean, the whole premise of the idea of social cohesion is that even if we have differences, we navigate that difference and disagreement respectfully and peacefully. And the Jewish Australian community in Melbourne here, my city, and in Sydney and other parts of Australia have gone through a very shocking period of time where there's been a great rise in anti-Semitism and attacks against the community. I mean, we all know it's an ancient and vile hatred that existed well before the 7th of October, but we've seen this shocking and tragic rise of attacks against the community over the last 15 months, and it is unacceptable. And I know that the federal government, the state government up there, your state government in New South Wales, law enforcement, the security and intelligence agencies are making this the number one priority to tackle anti-Semitism and to protect the community.
You speak there of the incidents that we've seen over the last 15 months, but the incidents that we saw in Dural in Sydney's northwest and in Maroubra in the east in the last 48 hours, does that suggest that we're at a bit of a tipping point here?
Look, I think the AFP have obviously running a number of lines of inquiry on those incidents, and with respect to Dural, obviously the AFP have noted that one line of inquiry is that there could be foreign actors involved. We don't want to jeopardise the operational investigation. In fact, I think the leak about some of that information may have affected the operation. So not going into the operational detail. When you say tipping point, this rise in anti-Semitism is huge. It has been significant over the last 15 months. And that's why, obviously, when we saw the escalations occur last year, the PM announced Operation Avalite, which was to actually have a joint task force to tackle anti-Semitism with law enforcement at the state and federal agencies and the AFP working together in a coordinated fashion to deal with these cases. And the full force of the law is being put in place. I think the other aspect of this, Catherine, is the importance of political leaders making sure that they unite Australians, that they are very clear that an attack on someone because of their faith identity or their ethnicity is absolutely unacceptable. Australians have a right to be able to practice in their places of worship, to go to their schools. If you disagree with people, disagree peacefully and respectfully. It is unacceptable when it crosses the line into violence or hate speech or vilification. The government can sanction that. We do. We have hate speech laws. The federal government's passed anti-doxing laws. We've passed laws against hate speech and against the Nazi salute. But there is a basic decency that Australians have that everyone has to step up and show leadership. Political leaders, the business community, faith leaders, multicultural communities, we're all part of this effort to push back against that hatred.
You are special envoy for social cohesion. So did it concern you, or does it concern you, about the information about the caravan and how it came to light and the timeline of who knew what, when obviously the Prime Minister yesterday says that he doesn't comment on operational issues? But is there any concern that the Prime Minister was left in the dark over this?
No, quite rightly, the Prime Minister, as he addressed in his press conference, does not comment on operational matters because any interference in that would jeopardise those operational matters. And I know the Prime Minister is regularly briefed by the security and agencies, the federal security agencies and the intelligence agencies, as your Premier is as well, as they should be. As I said, the AFP is running a number of lines of inquiry on this. They need to conduct their processes, their investigations unhindered. It's important that political leaders, governments support the law enforcement agencies with resources and support to do their jobs. And I think that is a really important principle.
So just sticking with that for one moment, is it a problem if, and I'm not suggesting that this is what happened, but if the New South Wales Premier was aware of the caravan hours, if not days, before the Prime Minister?
Well, Catherine, the law enforcement has to be able to do their job. Discussing operational matters just hinders that. And as I
Hmm.
said, an important principle is that you don't interfere in that. As I said, the Prime Minister is briefed by his security agencies and other intelligence security agencies, as is the Premier, as it should be. There is Operation Avalite, which was announced and established by the Prime Minister last year
Mm.
because we saw that escalation of attacks. And that Operation Avalite, the importance of it is there is a joint task force set up so the communication between law enforcement agencies, state and federal, is more seamless and is focused with an objective around tackling anti-Semitism and investigating in a coordinated fashion through the intelligence and through other operational efforts to tackle this scourge. It is a scourge. It is a violent ancient hatred. We've seen a shocking rise. The Jewish Australian community have gone through a very extremely difficult period. I think some of the worst we've seen in my lifetime, certainly in probably decades. And it is important that we support the community. I think more broadly speaking, that idea that you can express your whatever view you have, ideological or political view, through hatred, through vilification, through hate speech, through attacks against a particular community is absolutely disgraceful and egregious. And I think the vast majority of Australians reject that outright. And I hope you're right in your first question
Mm.
that this is a small, loud minority that is conducting these attacks.
Yeah, I think we all feel that way, Peter. But just before I let you go, in your role as a special envoy for social cohesion, what steps are you going to be taking as a direct result of what we've seen in Sydney's northwest at Dural and in the east in Maroubra over the last couple of
Uh,
days?
I'll also be seeking briefings from law enforcement and security agencies in Canberra next week, obviously with those national bodies. But this is an ongoing effort, and the engagement that I've had in my role is to engage with those communities, those vulnerable communities, the Jewish community, other communities across Australian society, and work on the policies and programs that, at a grassroots level, provide funding and resources, obviously, for programs that help with social cohesion and bringing people together and uniting people despite our backgrounds and our differences, and really uplifting that resilience around what makes for a harmonious Australian society. I think all Australians, your listeners, know that what we've built up in Australia is precious. A multi-faith, multi-ethnic society where we largely get on and give each other a fair go. We might disagree, but
Hmm.
we do it peacefully. That is our goal.
Peter, it's been good to speak with you. Thank you for giving us your time.
Pleasure. Thanks, Catherine.
That was Peter Khalil there. He is the federal Labor MP for the Melbourne seat of Will.